is all about who you're selling to. Payment providers, the banks. It's a difficult world. The Israeli cyber ecosystem is the strongest in the world. It is the most unique in the world. Israeli startups, like the army, don't always ask permission. They go.
Right.
They go and they do it fast. And they have to. That's part of the definition.
For a brief moment, let's talk about a really important topic for growth. Many Israeli tech companies are tasked with expanding in America. And as you know, one of the hardest things to do is recruiting. That is why IsraelTech is proud to bring you Hagesha Group, a trusted partner helping Israeli tech companies expand and recruit in the United States. Hagesha Group helps you quickly find top talent that fits culturally with your Israeli tech company. If you're looking for the best results, Hagesha Group is on the ground in the US to help you deliver no matter what. For more information on Hagesha Group, you can visit hageshagroup.com. And now, back to the show. Welcome to another episode of IsraelTech. I'm excited to have here my friend Nancy Shapira from Gartner Israel. What's up, Nancy?
Everything's good.
Thanks for having us here in your office. We're at Mindspace in Herzliya, for those that don't know. You guys have a great, awesome place. So I've been seeing you around at events, and you're very omnipresent. And that's because you're really serving a lot here with the tech ecosystem. So maybe you can kind of like just jump right into kind of like what exactly is going on in the tech ecosystem.
Okay. So as you may know, I do have a lot of focus on cyber, but also we work with the fintech communities and some of the other communities. Just cyber is very strong in Israel, as you know. So I spend a lot of time with them, meaning the whole ecosystem, the VCs, the academia, the people that are running the conferences. I do a lot of meetups, the cyber startups themselves, which there are hundreds and hundreds of, as you know. And I try to do, a regular dose of networking. I love your events.
Thank you.
Yep. So it's one of the ones that is on my list, but I try to go to the conferences, the big ones. There's being a lot run now by law firms also for getting into it, and the VCs. So I try to do once or twice a week some sort of networking event to meet and to expand my network.
We'll definitely want to get to cyber, but let's talk about fintech, because a lot of people talk about fintech in Israel. It's the number 2 after cyber,
right?
Vertical, but like you mentioned community also. And is there a fintech community like their cyber community? Cyber community kind of comes out of the army, they know each other, they have a shared experience. Why is fintech so strong, and is there a community, so to speak? That's
a great question, because I feel that there is not, even though there are groups that are running fintech events on a regular basis, I don't feel like it's a cohesive community. I don't feel like it's necessarily people that know each other for many years or interact with each other on a regular basis. I feel there's a lot of degrees of separation actually in fintech. Whereas in cyber, as you know, they all know each other. They're 1 degree separated from somebody else. And they're a very tight community in many ways, which is hard if you are not part of it and you haven't been able to get into it. But if you are a part of it, it's a very warm, welcoming community, super smart, super resilient. And I just find it to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest community in Israel as an ecosystem.
What do you think is the common denominator when it comes to fintech startups?
Or
founders?
Actually, I've also struggled with the whole definition of fintech, because I feel like some of them come in from different areas. They don't necessarily have a background in fintech. It's something that they decided is a problem that needs to be solved, so they're going to try to solve it, so they hire other people that do fintech, but they don't necessarily come with a strong fintech background. And I think part of that is because Israel itself doesn't have a lot of big fintech companies or places where they can learn from that will enhance their experience and their knowledge.
Do they have a finance background at all, or?
Some of them do, but I don't find there to be a lot of. No, I don't. I think they're mostly technology background of some sort, not necessarily fintech. And I think fintech is all about who you're selling to, and you're selling to the payment providers, the banks. It's a difficult world. It's very complicated.
Slow.
It's getting more complicated. The whole payments.
Why is it getting more complicated?
Because I think things are changing all the time. The banks, some of the payment processors are doing things that the banks used to do. The banks have to keep up with the innovation in the space, and they don't always do that. Mm-hmm. In Israel, they try. They do. I know they do a lot of POCs with different types of startups from cyber, from fintech, from all over. I think that helps the Israeli bank system. But if you're selling outside international, I think it's hard to get those contacts and to understand what the ecosystem really means. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard to get into those type of, to get into a bank is difficult as a small Israeli vendor. So I think they have a lot of hurdles that you have less in some of the other ecosystems.
So let's get into cyber then.
Yeah.
The ecosystem's strong. They all know each other,
yes.
Right? So what have you noticed that's unique about the cyber tech ecosystem here that kind of puts it apart from the other industries?
So I actually heard one of the big corporate VCs say just a few months ago, he said, in his opinion, the Israeli cyber ecosystem is the strongest in the world. It is the most unique in the world.
In cyber or for any
in
ecosystem?
Cyber.
The specific.
In
Who
cyber.
said this?
One of the big corporate VCs in Israel.
In Israel, they're multinational.
A multinational, okay, because he sees everything and he sees it from the other side. Also, he sees it from the corporate side. Mm-hmm. And I think that also, I've always said, cyber is the perfect problem. It's the perfect storm. Because you can't really solve the problem.
Right.
Ever.
You could always be more secure.
You could always be more secure.
Right.
But you have to try. You have to spend money on it. And in Europe and the US and also in Asia, there's so much regulation around it that you could also lose your job.
If you're not.
When you get hacked.
Right.
When you get hacked. So it's the perfect storm, because if you're a cyber vendor and you're trying to solve a specific problem, which hundreds of other companies are trying to solve, then it comes down to other things, your connections, how do you do marketing, whatever, because there is no perfect solution. And the big companies are trying to do end-to-end. That's a hard thing to do.
Right.
They're trying. So they're buying up companies. You know who they are, the big companies.
Right.
But it's a very hard thing to integrate. And it's a very hard thing. Since I've started in this industry, everybody's been trying to do that. I don't think everybody's really done the whole thing.
Well, why is it so hard to integrate cybersecurity into a larger company?
Because the larger companies just not built with the same mindset. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's their biggest problem when they buy a startup, not necessarily Israeli, but somebody who's innovative and works, the way they work, the startups, they need a lot of resilience, they need a lot of agility, they need to move fast.
Right.
And then they get put in an environment where it's the opposite. Okay, it's corporate America, usually they have a lot of rules, you can't just do what you want, you have to go up all these levels to get permission to do things. The Israeli startups, like the army, don't always ask permission, they go. They go and they do it fast, and they have to. Mm-hmm. That's part of the definition of succeeding, I think, in any ecosystem, but especially in the ecosystems where the problems are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And like you said, cyber is never ending. It's never ending. You're never going to solve the problem. So that, to me, is a perfect storm.
So what about when it comes to rapidly growing companies? Can they integrate small startups? So like Wiz, which has become a giant, but it was just a startup like yesterday.
I just bought Daz.
Right, exactly. I saw that. Do you think, can they integrate Daz and other even smaller startups into themselves, or is there a certain point? What's the tipping point from everything you've seen working at Gartner, where kind of a company goes from startup innovative, move fast and break shit, to becoming a little more corporate, a little more extra layers of legal, et cetera?
Yeah. So it's a great question, because I think it's one of the problems in the whole scaling up of Israeli companies. Wiz, I think, is a special situation, because the CEO is extremely talented. So is his team. He and Daz and Meirav were, knew each other very well. They're supposedly friends. It's different. I don't think you can compare that to anything else. That acquisition was, There was a good chance that was going to happen. It's not the same. Daz also had grown. They're not a small startup anymore. So I think that's a special situation. I think that what we're seeing, what I'm hearing also is that there's less innovation budget, okay, especially in the States, for small startups. Like
You mean to hire them or to acquire?
To acquire.
To acquire.
Or even to buy their product. You know, chief security officers have discretionary budget and they have, keep doing what you're doing already. The discretionary budget, which is for innovative companies that do a niche solution, has shrunk. And that's what most Israeli companies do.
So because of the economy and inflation the last 2.5 years?
Everything.
Or was it before then?
Yeah, it started about 2 years ago, but
yes. That's when things, that's when the economy really took a hit, yeah.
But so I think that the question that you asked it's interesting because some CEOs can do the jump from small to large. I would say a lot of them might not be capable of doing it because they're technological experts. They are not marketing. I've tried to explain marketing to many of them. As you know, it's a different mindset.
Correct, yeah.
And it's not one that they can always, wrap their heads around. And I always tell them from the very beginning, you need marketing, no matter how good your product is. I believe it's the best solution in the world. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what I think. If nobody knows about it, if they don't understand what you do, then it doesn't matter. And I think that leap from going from technological founders to getting a marketing person, and then scaling up is something that needs to get stronger in Israel. I think it has over the last couple of years because I think there's better VP marketing in Israel, Israelis or Anglos based in Israel, doesn't matter, that the level of that expertise has gone up. And it's obviously a better cultural fit than maybe hiring a VP marketing in States, which a lot of startups do. But that is not enough. The founders have to have the mindset that if they want to make this work, they need to understand the marketing side of things also. It's not enough to just understand the product. And they can't build a perfect product. That's what I would tell them. Mm-hmm. Don't try to build a perfect product. There's no such thing. You have to understand what's coming down the line and what you need to have in your roadmap that is going to help you pivot if you need to and keep growing. And I think those are the things, those are the skills that still need a lot of strengthening in Israel from Israeli founders.
What's stopping us from strengthening that?
I think some of the VCs are helping because they understand that that's what needs to change. But I think it's more of a mindset that has to come from even maybe 8200. Like maybe when these guys are coming out of 8200 or the other units, that being technological is not enough. And one of the big trends that we've seen, I didn't talk with you about this before, big trend that's affecting everybody, especially startups, is no matter who you thought you were selling to, no matter who you thought your buyer was, you thought it was one person, two people, it's spread. It's huge now. The buying map, even for a small solution, has expanded to maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe more people. Includes the CFO, includes procurement, even if it's a small company.
Why? Is it because they want to have a closer hold on the purse strings, so to speak?
Yes, it's also caution. It's also, they want more people.
Caution financially, caution for the right fit.
Both. They want to make sure it's the right fit.
Right.
We've seen that for instance, the chief security officers are losing some of their influence in the buying process because they want the CFO to say yes. They want other people from the other parts of the business line to say, yes, this is a good fit for us. And it's moving away. And I find that a lot of the founders here don't know how to talk to those buyers.
Right. Do you think these companies, the enterprises that are doing that,
yeah,
do you think in a sense they kind of want to distribute the responsibility of bringing on a new technology or software? So in case they may have made a mistake or they don't want to take the chance, they don't want to sign their name on it.
Yes.
They want to put someone else's name on it.
Absolutely.
So it seems like there's been a cultural change in enterprises in general.
Yeah.
Is it because people are scared to lose their jobs? Is it a greater culture within America? What's going on?
All those factors.
This is extremely destructive to an enterprise.
It is.
When you become bureaucratic and middle management becomes
just it slows everything down. How can one compete in the long term?
You're right. It's also trickling down to even the smaller, mid-sized companies that you spread out the buying process. Yeah, you're right. It slows everything down. It is a mix of all those things that you mentioned: financial, worried about losing your job, responsibilities, regulation, which is also increasing all the time. All these things are slowing down the process. And when you're a new innovative company in a niche market, meaning you only solve one part of the problem, then it becomes even harder. Because then you have to prove, why should I spend this amount of money on a solution that's only going to really solve a small part of my whole problem? Maybe I should go for one of the big vendors that maybe they're not as innovative, but they say at least that they're going to solve the whole problem. So there used to be a saying, if you buy IBM, nobody will fire you.
That was just
I know. I could see it in your eyes.
That was exactly what I was thinking, right?
But that's not true anymore.
Or bring in a consultant firm, right?
Yeah.
Also,
right.
They would say, "What's there?" Bring them out. We bought McKinsey. It was like, oh, yeah. So if it's you, if it worked out, you get the credit. If it screwed up, hey, I bought McKinsey.
That's
what
right.
do you want from me?
That's right. But that's also part of the role of Gartner, okay? Because a lot of people
be the scapegoat. No,
I don't know if it's a scapegoat, but like the insurance policy, okay? Because they're also consulted in some spaces, okay? Right. They're asked, should I buy this vendor? What do you think of them? And I actually was involved with a company who's now very successful, but it was a very early stage, and they had initially said, well, we don't need Gartner's help. We're fine. And they were in kind of the SIM space or logs space. And then 6 months later, they called me, and I said, why are you calling me, right? Because that's not a normal thing that would happen. They said, well, we fired our CEO, and we have just replaced I'm a founder, and I'm the product guy. I'm now the CEO. And we were in a POC. We were in the procurement process. We were in signing already. And then somebody from the corporate called Gartner and probably some other companies and said, who are these guys? Do you know anything about them? Validate it for us. And they couldn't. The analysts couldn't validate. And they were kicked out of the process.
That sucks.
Now they went on to really become a big company. They raised money. They raised a lot of money. They became very successful. They were able to pivot and listen to advice from outside. But that's an example of sometimes you do everything right, and a lot of Israelis know how to get into POCs. I think, as you know, how do you close the deal?
Right.
All right. That's all that counts at the end, right? And just getting in a POC is not enough anymore.
Why are Israelis good at getting into a POC?
Because I think the VCs are giving them, at least the larger VCs, they have a lot of experience. They have good boards that help the companies, understand what these type of clients need. Sometimes they make the connections for them. There's a lot more of that than there was 10 years ago. So that's part of it. They also use their personal connections because some of them either come from a previous company or bought or by a big company. So they have connections already that help them get in the door.
Right.
But as you know, with what you guys do, it's not about that.
Right.
And also you have to choose who do you want to get in the door with, because that one company could take up your entire resources.
Right.
You have to pick your POCs.
Right.
You have to make sure you have recyclable use cases. You really have to plan it out. And I think the Israelis are getting better at doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think the VCs are helping them get better at it, definitely. And also they come back with their own experience and they tell their stories. And they do learn. But I think we still have a learning curve there. And I'm not sure who's going to fill the gap on that. But it needs to be improved, I think, if they want to succeed. I think just things are getting harder and harder. It's just not enough to have a great product, right?
Right.
It's not enough.
Well, if you have a great product and no one knows about it, then...
Exactly.
If you have a great product, you can't connect with the enterprise and it doesn't help you.
Right.
So founders, one of the big challenges of Israeli founders is being able to go to market.
Yeah.
In America, we talked about, the buying committee, how to be able to reach people beyond just the technical experts within the enterprises. Right. What are the greatest challenges? Are there other challenges you're seeing in go-to-market? Are there any unique strengths Israelis have? And how do you play a part?
I think that basically the founders are open Most of them are open to listening and to get advice. I think that a lot of things that we do at Gartner, which is something fairly new in the last couple of years, it's not something people are maybe aware about, but we do help them with every stage of their go-to-market. Meaning they can ask questions of the analyst about pricing, for instance, which is a biggie. They don't always know how to price it. They can ask about partners, which another biggie. We have a lot of tools that help them really do a template and figure out, how do I go about this in a methodical type of way so that I pick out the best partner. In fact, the whole decision-making process. I mean, what's go-to-market? It's decisions. What vertical do I pick? What use cases do I pick? Which is another biggie. I would say use cases is probably one of the top issues that they have to deal with, as opposed to being opportunistic and taking whatever comes their way, okay, or who they know. I think they need to plan and say, okay, which use cases, banks, financial systems, whatever it is, whatever vertical, retail, what are the ones that we have the most opportunity in? And how do we go about building a real use case for it and something that's replicable? I think that's really the biggest challenge.
People take use cases that seriously. Don't they know it's customized and all that?
They do. I'm just not sure they know how to always do it, and they need sometimes a sounding board. Something can be Gartner, it can be somebody else, but they need to have a sounding board and it not just be the founders to say, okay, we have 5 opportunities. Which ones do we pick? Which ones do we go after and why? Okay, are they going to be replicable afterwards? Is this a business where we have opportunity, or is it completely, big players and it's going to be much harder for us to get our foot in the door?
So you help Gartner Israel, you help Israeli tech companies go to market by knowing what use cases and what direction to go into what verticals or industries to target as customers.
Yes.
And prepare that information, help them sell.
Yes, and we do it on an ongoing basis.
Right.
Meaning they can ask, somebody who's a client, they can ask, and we have an no limit amount of inquiries that they can ask the analyst across the board, because this is a moving target, right? It moves all the time. You can make a decision about your positioning today, next month it could be different. So I think one of the best tools that we have, which again, I'm not sure people are aware of it, that people are allowed to submit their content, okay, their website, their decks for different opportunities, even blog posts, whatever. Send that to an analyst, ask them for their critique, and they will put in critique and change some of the messaging. They're not going to write it for you. We don't do content. We don't do paid content, but we do critique it and what I call Gartnerize it, okay? Because sometimes the vendors are using terms in the market that are not necessarily Gartner terms. And in some cases, Gartner is building those categories. So you need to at least know what language they're using. So, we help them very tactically, not just strategically, with their positioning, their messaging on an ongoing basis. I think that's one of the biggest values that we bring them, and we can work with analysts all around the world. We're not,
Yeah, Wadi, my marketing company, we do that for SEO, is that we know what categories Gartner's building.
Right.
And so we know those are keywords, and they have no one's working on doing SEO on those keywords yet because there's no volume yet.
Right.
So we start to do SEO on those. So when it becomes a category,
right,
these small startups can make sure to show up first organically.
But what's interesting is, I just want to give you one example of one category that did not exist when there was about 7 Israeli companies that were involved in this space. It's called the data security posture management space. There was no category when Centra and Flow and Polar, Laminar, all these guys started. But together as a team, we worked with the analysts and we just kept giving them the same message from the market and from the vendors saying, this is what the market is calling it. And we actually, it did appear on a hype cycle, which is one of our, tracking the technologies at the hype part, and it's grown. And obviously some of those companies have already been sold. 3 or 4 of them have already been sold from that space. The categories themselves change all the time.
Right.
So it's something you really need to keep track of. because it is a very dynamic thing. Categories disappear, categories get combined into other. Cloud security especially is just, how many acronyms, it's hard to count how many acronyms we have in cloud security.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. So I think it's a good thing, but I think it also can be confusing at some point. And what we always tell the vendors is, you know what, guys, go back to basics. What problem you're solving? How are you doing it better than anybody else? Okay, who are your competitors? And be real with that one, because you need competitors. And the category may or may not come afterwards. What we do say is, get that right. What is the problem you're solving? Is it a real problem? Are people going to pay for it? Okay, that's the most important point.
Right.
Who is going to pay for it?
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's a category that exists. If you don't have enough buying power behind it, then it's something you should really consider pivoting away from. So it's a very dynamic thing. And what we usually show them, we show them the map of all the categories and say, okay, you're the closest to this one. You're maybe 70% of what the definition is. So attach yourself to that. Explain why you're different, better, more agile, more innovative, but use the box, get in the box to get out of the box.
Right. It's kind of like when someone says, our startup is the Uber of XYZ or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
That
Right.
you're obviously nothing, like it's like half of that. It's just easy. It's a shortcut.
Yeah, it's a shortcut. I'm saying you can use if you want to make up a category, good luck with that. It's not easy. It has been done. I've seen it happen several times, but it's hard to do on the outside. If you're inside and you know who to talk to, you can do it. It takes time, but as you know, creating a category, it's about marketing.
Yep.
Also, and it's a lot of money, and you have to create the brand and you have to create the awareness and always check what the buyers think. And it's a moving target. So
What do you think are probably the most underrated or exciting categories Gartner has? You personally, like what
underrated?
underrated, most exciting, greatest potential, just things to keep an eye on.
So I was telling you before, which is interesting because in Israel, defense tech is obviously very hot for good and bad reasons. The VCs are really going. I've been at a couple of conferences already. They're really going after it. So Gartner just started covering it, actually. They do a hype cycle on it. So I think will be interesting to see how it turns out, because I do think that it's harder to get those connections in defense tech. It's a longer sales cycle.
Yes, it's governments. Also.
They got to be ready for that. It's a long sales cycle. So the ones that don't get funding on this is going to be hard for them to.
Right, they need a lot
this.
more funding too.
They need a lot more funding,
Yeah.
and they need marketing, and they need the contacts.
How is marketing to government different than from the enterprise?
First of all, I think it's a whole different language. It's a different level also of what you can say and what you can't say. You can't always say who your clients are, all right, which can be a problem. And you have to understand the map. You have to understand which governments work with each other, which ones don't, which ones, if you bring as a reference, might not help you in a certain specific. You really need to know that map of who's who and who's. So I think it's a very different atmosphere, and I think the biggie for Israeli companies is the sales cycle is going to be longer.
Yeah.
And they need to be.
I need that burn rate.
Yeah.
Flat. That's the hard thing, which is why you need more funding.
Yeah.
How is Gartner Israel? I mean, we have a really unique tech ecosystem. Different from Gartner in other countries or even the United States.
Yep. Good question. So Gartner is a global company. It's a $5 billion plus company. Israel, as a fully owned subsidiary, has been since 2012. And from the very beginning, we really utilized the startup part of our business. Although we do work with the big companies, we have a few very large companies that are clients in Israel, that their divisions in Israel, even if they report to somebody overseas, they work with us here. And I think that the advantage that we have, obviously before Corona, is we have very good connections as a team and a lot of combined knowledge that we use to help get to the right analysts. We understand who they are, personal information, that we can help guide the Israeli companies. In the US, it's a bit different because I would say we have people that have expertise. They've been VP marketing. They know the other side. They know what it means to be like a Gartner client. In the States, a lot of times you'll have very young people get hired to be Gartner account managers. And the thing that defines us the most is, the expression skin in the game.
Yeah, of course.
So it's an American expression. How would you explain? It comes from football, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but yes.
Okay, I don't know even if there's a translation to Hebrew, but basically...
You're personally invested in this.
We have skin in the game in Israel because every client that we have, they're here and they know each other. And we need to, whatever vertical we're talking about, and the VCs know each other. So we really give great service to these companies because it's part of our brand. In the US, it's a bit more disconnected because usually you're going to get most of your service online. These people, if they're promoted, they'll move on and, they're gone and you get somebody else. And they don't have skin in the game. If you're a client of theirs, fine, they will give you good service, but it's probably not a long-term thing. I've been in Gartner for 12 years, and I've brought in 150 logos to Gartner, and a lot of them are still clients, some of them over 12 years. And I still have to maintain, even though I don't necessarily take care of them anymore, because we have a team of 25 people on the vendor side in Israel, and another 8 on the buyer side, 8 to 10 on the buyer side. We have to keep up these relationships. That's part of what we do. So it's an added layer, I think, that helps us really give the Israeli companies value. There are rules of engagement. We can't always, work with Israeli companies that move the whole company to the States, which we see happening sometimes. We see them not even setting up an Israeli entity, which can, make things a little bit more difficult. We can't work with somebody who doesn't have an Israeli entity. But I think as far as the viewpoint and the value, I think it's different. It's very different. We all have the same values. The pricing is the same. There's in dollars, others in shekels. It's the same price. So that's not an issue. But I think it's an issue of you get to know who's dealing with you and you get great service.
I go to a lot of clients, and as I research Israeli tech companies, I often see cool vendor on their website. How do I buy one?
Thank you for setting me up for that one. Yeah, that is one of the most popular questions. Is if you can't buy one.
Okay.
Can't buy one. But I will tell you about the process.
Yeah. Well, what is it? And why
everybody wants to know.
Why do you call it a cool vendor? Are they actually cool, or is that just a great name for marketing?
Well,
from one to the badge.
Actually, cool is kind of from the 60s, 70s. I don't know, but they've kept it. It's basically the analysts are looking for an innovative company. Okay, whatever that means. It means something in every different area, right?
Right.
Every analyst is allowed to nominate. You do not have to be a client to get one. In fact, I'd say about 50% of cool vendors are not clients. It depends on how the analyst sees you in his or her own category. They're looking for a vendor that's disruptive, that is going to take the business that they're in and really change it. Sometimes it can be a business model. It's not always about the technology.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like Secdu got cool vendor for actually their business model with MSSPs. Usually it's about the technology. Usually it's about what they can do and what effect they're going to have on the market. Okay, so and the way, so Gartner did update this a couple years ago that it's now twice a year. There's a cool vendor. The first cycle is in
Per
April.
category?
Per category.
How many companies are in a category?
So that's a good question. 4 to 5, no more than that.
Cool.
Okay? And sometimes the category can be kind of broad, so it's not like you can pin it. And also they change every year.
Right. Can you find yourself in one category one year, then the next year suddenly?
You only get it once.
Got it. And so you're stuck with it.
That's it. Yeah.
Can you be multiple categories?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
So you can only get one cool
You can only get
badge.
one once. And
or once per year?
No, once.
That's it.
Once in your lifetime. Because first of all, it's a great thing for vendors. It gives them a lot of hype. The big vendors, a lot of times, are looking out for it. Like if you look back at Microsoft's cybersecurity acquisitions in the past, almost all of them have been Gartner cool vendors. Microsoft, of course, is a client. They look at these things, they investigate it, and it means something to them. Okay, especially since it is objective. You don't have to be a client to have one. What you do need to do is impress the right analyst at the right time. That's the tricky part. Okay, so it gets published in April and May, and then it gets published again September, October. Okay, and the let's say the edit time for that, like if you want to try to be included in one of those, it's like 3 months back, right? Maybe even a little bit more. So you have to get in front of the right analyst that is going to think you're interesting and cool, more interesting and more cool than the 100 of other vendors that he or she talks to.
Right.
In that period. So it's nothing we can ever promise. Okay, it's timing. Right. It's how you present yourself that we can help you with, but it's the timing is a big thing because it's about.
If you're going to disrupt, you can also be too early, not just.
That's true. But you can't be too late because once you get in a big report, like a branded report in Gartner, then you can't be a cool vendor anymore.
Right. Once you got it.
So you have like a period of time that you can, that you have the potential to be that. And they're very clear that it's not an award. It's a recognition. It's a recognition of vendors' ability to potentially disrupt or be innovative. Okay, so. But it has a lot of weight. It gets a lot of views, and so that's what you tell people. We, like anything else in Gartner, we can't promise you, even if you're a client, we cannot promise you coverage. We don't work like that. We're not pay for play.
Right.
That I definitely want to put to bed.
Right.
We don't. The advantage you get if you're a client is that you get more exposure. You can talk to an analyst, as many times as you want a year, basically. And if you're not a client, sometimes you get one shot, and maybe you get it in that one shot. I saw that happen once. I saw a vendor walk in the room with an analyst.
This is positive.
I don't know. No, I can't say who it is. But I was in the room and it was with an analyst, and it was a woman, and she heard their pitch. They had nothing. They didn't have the product yet. They had the idea. Okay, but these guys were super, super charismatic. They had a great idea. She gave him a cool vendor based on that.
Just like that?
Yeah.
You're not going to look into bribing or anything? I'm just teasing. Can IsraelTech be a cool vendor?
No.
Damn it. It was worth a try.
Yeah.
So I thought
put the little thing on your wall and
Nah, that's fine. I don't have space on the wall anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have a diploma up there anyway, even though that I do. Let's talk about defense tech a little bit more and academics. Actually, let's go straight with academics.
Yep.
We touched a little bit about AI, a little bit about cyber. A theme that I've been seeing and I've been learning more about is cyber comes from the Army. AI often comes from academics, from PhDs.
Right.
So how does Gartner navigate working with academics or maybe founders coming out fresh out of the Army? What's like working with academics?
So I basically work with the academic community more as a partner, okay, because they are source of information. They, like you said, a lot of the PhDs are coming up with ideas that eventually turn into companies. Okay, but you're right that you need the two together, and I do think the Army is also going to specialize in AI. Okay, they probably are already.
Right.
That's going to come out of the Army also. Maybe it won't be so public knowledge, but it really is something that everyone needs to understand and know how to use, when to use it, how not to use it. And those are questions that our clients are asking us all the time.
What do you mean when not to use it? Can you give an example?
I don't have a specific example, but I'm saying there are uses of AI that people are worried that it's going to be disruptive or dangerous or whatever. Obviously, you don't know what that's going to be, but that's obviously one of the biggest questions that people have. Like, is this safe? Can I be sure that it's not going to take over my business? I'm not going to need any more employees anymore. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and people are worried about it, right? So the academics can't always give those questions. they answer those questions. They can come up with ideas. They understand AI. They need to be able to communicate it to the technological vendors. But I just think that everybody, this generation, everybody's going to have knowledge of AI.
Yeah.
There's no question.
So what is it like, go back to the academics, what's
Yeah.
it like to work with academics specifically?
So-
like culturally, how are they different?
Yeah.
Is the process different? Is it the bureaucracy, the bureaucratic, their
Right.
personalities, often they're older, more mature,
Yeah.
have families already established, they're not in their, let's say, 20s.
Yep.
I feel so old when I say that. What's it like to work with the academics in tech and AI in particular?
So I think it's very important, especially in Israel, to know who they are, to know who the influencers are, to know who is connected. I think all the academic institutions today, all of them are connected with the tech ecosystem. They, a lot of them have some sort of incubator or accelerator. They all have it. They understand that they need that connection between the two of them. They understand that they both think differently. And the academics, yes, they're, sometimes they're looking for the perfect solution also. And they may not understand the entire business environment. Okay, so there's definitely has to be a partnership, both of them. I enjoy working with them. I work a lot with Tel Aviv University. Specifically, they're doing a lot of also really good conferences. They know how to bring a different level of speaker to the conferences. It's a different type of conference than as opposed to a purely commercial one. So I find that refreshing, and I find it to be, you want real content, right? You don't want vendors getting up there telling them how good they are. You want to go to a conference where you're going to have somebody really smart who's going to tell you what's next, what's coming next. And I find that when you work with the academics, with the universities, that's what they bring. And also, I think they're less encumbered by the profit side of things. Okay, they're doing this because they see this as their mission.
Or like life's work.
It's their life's work.
They have years behind them of
Exactly.
work.
And they
Right.
are not. They are
They're not starting off their
focused on the
careers.
profit.
Right.
They're not.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, profit isn't as much of a priority for them.
No. It can also be a problem for them, right? Because
Right.
they don't
because
have the
if they're
budget.
positive and they don't have the budget. And
don't
they
have the
don't make an
budget.
impact. Well, are they more ideological?
I think so. I think that the whole profit thing is because they're doing this for a reason. They believe in what they're doing. I'm not saying the founders, the vendors do also, but I think it's very different if you go to a fully commercial conference as opposed to somebody who has, PhDs or head of governments or people that are going to give you a different perspective on things that you don't usually get. And I think that's the biggest value of working with academics. And they obviously have to work together, but they all know that. They all have connections to the tech ecosystem. And I think a lot of the conferences also they always include the innovative vendors in whatever they do. So there's definitely a good connection. I think it is a different mindset, so I think there may be some misunderstandings there, here and there. But I think in Israel it works because people know each other, people understand where you come from, they understand what value everybody brings. And I think Israelis in general know how to work together unless, they're fighting about it. But
Basically, yeah.
But I think that on the bottom line, when it comes to creating something, and that they all have a certain purpose, even the tech founders, they have a purpose. They're not all doing it. They're not doing it just for money.
Right.
They really believe in what they're doing. They want to solve a problem. They want to fix things. They want to believe they're doing some good in the world, stopping whoever it is, the hackers or the fraudsters or whoever it is. They see that as a mission. It's important to them.
So you've been in Israel for a long time. Would you say
Yeah.
120 years, you said? Geez, like for 45?
Something like that.
So you've seen the tech ecosystem evolve dramatically.
Right. Sure.
What do you think, what has surprised you the most? What's the most exciting, maybe anything you can look back on that we can also maybe help us guess where things are going?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's always improved. I mean, I think that the learning curve, and there's always one, but I think the if you think back, we didn't have B2C companies.
Right.
Succeeded, now we do. We didn't have scaled up companies. We didn't have unicorns.
Right.
I mean, I think it's amazing. Obviously, the economic situation is a little different as damage some of that, but I think we're in a totally different space. And I think, some people try to call us scale-up nation. I do think that's what we need to learn how to do better. But we've done a lot better. We've come a long way.
Were there any certain pivot points or certain aha moments where you thought, since you've been working also at Gartner for 13 years or something?
12 years. Yeah.
That was a pivotal moment or aha moment that you think reflects kind of the microcosm of the ecosystem in Israel?
I think I just read a book called The Greatness of Israel.
Oh, great.
I told you about that, right?
What? Yeah. No, I have it.
Oh, you have it.
I bought it at the airport this summer. It's terrific.
And it really does explain.
I'm too proud.
Well, it's hard to get
two
to everything.
chapters in yet.
But to me, that helped crystallize for me the same guys that were at Startup Nation.
Yeah,
right?
Dan, Saul Singer and Dan
Right.
Senior.
So they really analyze, and I think this is the key, is that Israelis are so resilient. Okay, and they have so many layers that help them be resilient. Their families, the army, their connections, their long-term connections that, and the ability to see family and friends all the time because of the distance.
Because we're geographically
so
small.
small.
Yeah.
Okay, so for us coming from the U.S.
Right. I was just thinking about
Yeah.
people fly for Thanksgiving. I was like, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Terrible idea, right. So in the
Especially when you're
book,
caught in the
I don't know
snow.
if you get to the part yet, he says, in Israel, Thanksgiving happens every week.
Right. Shabbat.
Friday night.
Right.
So I think what I've seen over the years is I've had to learn that because obviously I don't have any of those layers. Didn't do school here, didn't do the army, didn't go to university here. I mean, don't have family here. I didn't have those layers. And I think that the thing that helped me is also working a job like this, and I've worked in high tech for a long time, different companies. But high tech is like its own bubble, and I appreciate it. And I think we've seen the best of Israel. I hope it's going to get better, okay, once we get out of the situation we're in right now. But I think we've seen the best of Israeli high tech.
You mean what, the best is behind us?
I don't know. It's changing because a lot of the companies are moving to the U.S.
Right.
But in Corona, for instance, they stayed put.
Right.
Because it was harder to be in the States for
Right.
Corona. So I just think the biggest thing I learned is that you never know. You've got to be ready to pivot and change and be resilient. I think that's a lesson I learned from Israelis, even without all the layers that the guys talk about that help them do that. I think just being in this country, seeing not just Israeli tech, but in general, get over so many crises, and God willing, we'll get out of this one soon too, it's an amazing experience. And the book helped me explain it to people. I send it to people overseas, I don't know if they read it, but it's very hard to explain. If you don't live it yourself and you haven't experienced it, it's hard to explain it.
Yep. They don't know what they're missing.
They don't know, but it's a very energizing experience. I personally love speaking to the entrepreneurs. First of all, I take my hat off to anyone who's willing to do that because it is so hard. It takes, they really have to put everything into it. If they have a family that gets, they have to be very supportive of them. I really take my hat off to them because it's a tough thing to do. And I think they do it with a sense of purpose. They give me energy because I feel like they are not really fazed by anything. They know that if they fall, they'll get back up, which is also one of the lessons of this book that Israelis know. You can fall and get back up. Mm-hmm. I think it's just really important lessons from Israeli society. And I think high tech is a microcosm of that. I think it's one of our most successful parts of Israeli society. And I hope it continues to grow. I've heard people who are leaders in this industry who are optimistic about it and trying to change things. And I hope they succeed.
Nancy from Gartner, thank you for being on IsraelTech.
Thank you. It was great.
It was a lot of fun.
You guys are fun.